It started on a Tuesday morning, one of those rare quiet days when my coffee was still hot, the dog was still asleep, and I thought nothing could disturb the peace. That illusion shattered the moment I stepped onto my porch and saw a bright orange envelope taped to my front door, the kind you usually only see when something is very wrong. It wasn't from the utility company or the post office, it was stamped in bold letters, Notice of Immediate Legal Action, HOA Enforcement Division. I froze. I wasn't even in an HOA. My house sat on the far end of town, outside their jurisdiction, on a property I'd inherited from my grandfather that predated any homeowners association in the area. Still, curiosity, and a creeping sense of dread, had me ripping it open right there on the porch. Inside was a 2-page letter demanding payment of $4,732.58 for unpaid assessments, community improvement fees, and late penalties, with a threat that if I didn't comply within 10 days, they'd involve law enforcement for theft of services. At the bottom, in a looping, self-important signature, was the name Karen M. Davenport, HOA president. I didn't know this woman personally, but her reputation was well known. The self-appointed queen of the Maple Grove HOA, a woman with a taste for control and a belief that her rules applied to everyone within eyesight of her subdivision, whether you lived there or not. I barely had time to process the absurdity of it before I saw her, Karen herself, marching up my driveway in a pressed blazer, oversized sunglasses, and a clipboard like she was some corporate auditor. Without so much as a hello, she started talking in that nasal, clipped tone that made every word sound like an accusation. "You've been ignoring repeated invoices," she announced, waving the clipboard as if it were a badge of authority. "The HOA has decided to escalate the matter." I calmly informed her that she must be mistaken, that I didn't live in Maple Grove, had no agreement with her HOA, and that her letter was going straight into the shredder. That's when her expression shifted from smug to outright hostile. She insisted I owed the community, because my driveway benefited from their street maintenance, and that I'd been using the HOA's trash services for months without paying. The kicker, my driveway connected to a county road, and my trash service was private. I tried to end the conversation, but she stepped closer, jabbing her clipboard toward my chest. "Refusal to pay," she said with relish, "is theft. And theft is a criminal offense. You will be arrested if you don't cooperate." I thought she was bluffing, until 2 days later, a patrol car pulled up in front of my house. The officer who stepped out was polite but firm, saying they'd received a formal complaint from the Maple Grove HOA accusing me of refusing to pay outstanding debts and illegally utilizing HOA services. The absurdity of the charges almost made me laugh, but I could tell the officer wasn't here for comedy. I explained the situation, showed him my separate trash service bills, property tax records proving I wasn't part of an HOA, and the fact that the road outside was publicly maintained. He seemed to understand, but he admitted that because a formal complaint had been filed, he had to document my statement. Karen was standing at the end of my driveway during the whole exchange, arms crossed, smirking like she'd already won. "Just arrest him already," she called out, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. That's when my patience started to wear dangerously thin. I wasn't just going to defend myself, I was going to find out exactly why this woman thought she could pull this stunt. Later that afternoon, I took the HOA's letter to my lawyer, a family friend named Mike who had been practicing for over 20 years. He skimmed the pages and almost immediately started shaking his head. "This is interesting," he murmured, pointing at a list of account numbers tied to the alleged unpaid bills. "These aren't yours. They all have the same customer number prefix. Maple Grove residents get these automatically when they join. Whoever this account belongs to has racked up years of unpaid dues, late penalties, even landscaping fees, but it's definitely not your account." He leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Either this is the worst clerical error I've ever seen, or she's trying to dump her own bills on you." My stomach dropped. The total owed matched almost exactly the number Karen had bragged about recovering for the community in a local paper interview a few months ago. That's when it hit me, she wasn't just overstepping her authority. She was trying to cover her own financial mess, and she had picked me as the scapegoat. The next morning, I was at the county records office by 9 a.m., fueled by black coffee and a growing determination to nail Karen's little scam to the wall. I requested public HOA filings for Maple Grove and, thanks to the Sunshine Laws, got access to years of annual reports, board meeting minutes, and financial statements. Buried among the dry budgets and landscaping contracts was a pattern that screamed mismanagement. Vendor invoices were marked, paid, with no receipts. Line items for community improvement projects appeared and disappeared without explanation. But the real bombshell came when I compared the account number from my supposed debt to an internal delinquent account list. It matched Karen Davenport's personal property in Maple Grove. She hadn't been paying her own HOA dues for 3 years, and the late penalties alone made up nearly half the total balance she was trying to pin on me. I sat there, flipping through the papers, half in disbelief and half in admiration at her audacity. She'd weaponized her position, redirected the debt onto my name, and filed a police complaint in hopes that I'd fold under pressure. Armed with copies of the documents, I decided to confront her, though not directly, not yet. I emailed the Maple Grove HOA board a formal letter disputing the charges, attaching evidence that the debt belonged to their own president. I CC'd my lawyer, the county clerk, and, just for flavor, the same police officer who'd shown up at my house. Within an hour, I got a call from an HOA board member named Patricia, who sounded both nervous and curious. I can't discuss internal matters," she began, "but I will say that what you sent us is eye-opening." The way her voice dropped told me I'd just tossed a live grenade into their next board meeting. By 5 p.m., I was getting texts from neighbors I barely knew saying Karen had been storming around Maple Grove all afternoon, telling anyone who'd listen that I was harassing her. Harassment, in Karen speak, apparently meant not letting her commit fraud in peace. That evening, my doorbell rang again, and there she was, Karen, sunglasses off this time, eyes blazing. She didn't even bother with pleasantries. "You think you're clever," she hissed. "You don't know who you're messing with. I will have you arrested. I have friends on the board, friends in the county office, people who trust me." Her voice cracked slightly on that last word, which told me she was less confident than she wanted me to believe. I kept my cool, leaning against the doorframe. "Karen," I said evenly, "you filed a false police report. That's a felony, and now I have proof that the bills you're trying to stick me with are yours. So here's what's going to happen: you're going to retract your complaint, or we'll let the county prosecutor decide what to do with you." For a moment, I thought she might actually swing at me, but she spun on her heel and stomped away, muttering something about lawyer games under her breath. The next day, Mike called me with an update that nearly made me spill my coffee. "So," he began, "apparently your letter to the HOA board caused a special emergency meeting last night. From what I'm hearing, half the board is furious. They didn't know Karen had been skipping her dues, and the other half is scrambling to protect her because she's been president for over a decade." He chuckled darkly. "Oh, and someone leaked your evidence packet to a local journalist. If that story runs, she's finished." That was the moment I realized Karen wasn't just in trouble, she was in quicksand. Every move she made to get me arrested was pulling her deeper into her own mess. And I had no intention of throwing her a rope. By Thursday morning, the fuse I'd lit finally hit the powder keg. The county's largest local paper ran a front-page story titled, "HOA President Accused of Shifting Personal Debt Onto Local Homeowner." My name was in it, but so was every dirty detail from the documents I'd given the board. They'd even managed to dig up old HOA meeting recordings where members complained about mysterious budget shortfalls and missing funds for landscaping contracts. Karen's smiling headshot, one she'd probably sent to the paper years ago for a puff piece, was now plastered beside bold subheadings like fraud allegations and possible criminal charges. By 8 a.m., my phone was buzzing nonstop with texts from neighbors, coworkers, and even the police officer who'd been sent to arrest me days earlier. His message was short and to the point: "Looks like you were right. She's in big trouble." I could almost hear the satisfaction in his voice. Around midday, I drove past the Maple Grove clubhouse, curious to see how bad the damage was. The parking lot was packed, news vans, board members' cars, and a small crowd of residents waving copies of the newspaper-like protest signs. Inside, through the big glass windows, I could see Karen at the podium, red-faced and shouting over the noise. A woman I recognized as Patricia kept trying to speak, but Karen would slam her gavel and yell her down. That's when I noticed something telling. Karen's usually meticulous hair was frizzing at the edges, and her hands trembled when she gripped her papers. She was losing control, and she knew it. When she spotted me standing outside, she froze mid-sentence, her expression flipping from fury to something closer to panic. The crowd turned to see what she was staring at, and suddenly all eyes were on me. I didn't stay long. I just gave a polite little wave and walked away. It wasn't about taunting her. It was about letting her know I wasn't going anywhere. That evening, there was a knock at my door, not a doorbell, not pounding, just a steady, professional knock. It was two uniformed officers, but this time their visit had nothing to do with arresting me. "Mr. Callahan," the taller one said, holding up a folder. "We're reopening the complaint your neighbor filed against you, except now it's as part of a criminal investigation against her. We'll need a statement and copies of the documents you provided your attorney." As we spoke, I caught sight of a familiar black SUV idling at the end of my street, Karen's vehicle. She was sitting in the driver's seat, phone pressed to her ear, watching the whole thing unfold. The officers noticed too. "She's been calling our department all day," one of them muttered. "Keeps asking if she can amend her original complaint. That's usually not a good sign for the complainant." It was official now. Karen wasn't just being embarrassed in public, she was being investigated. The very next day, Mike called me with another update, and this one was the biggest yet. "They've suspended her," he said. "The HOA board voted last night to strip her of presidential duties pending the outcome of the investigation. And get this, Patricia has been appointed acting president." I could practically hear the champagne corks popping over in Maple Grove. Apparently, Patricia's first act in office had been to formally retract the HOA's complaint against me, issue me a written apology, and promise that the association would review its policies to prevent future overreach. The cherry on top, she told Mike she'd be happy to testify on my behalf if the county decided to press charges against Karen. For the first time in a week, I felt the tension in my shoulders loosen. But something told me Karen wasn't done yet. People like her didn't go down quietly, they went down swinging. It was just after midnight when the first sign of trouble came, a loud metallic clang outside my house. I peeked through the blinds and saw the shadowy outline of someone crouching near my trash bins, flashlight in hand. At first, I thought it was a raccoon, or maybe some unlucky teen on a dare, until I saw the shape straighten and the beam of light catch a familiar mop of blonde hair. "Karen." I slipped on a jacket, grabbed my phone, and quietly opened the front door. "Looking for something?" I asked, my voice low but sharp. She jumped, dropping the flashlight, then recovered with a sneer. "Just verifying you're still using Maple Grove trash service without paying," she said, gesturing toward my bins like she'd caught me red-handed. I laughed, loud enough to echo in the quiet street. "Karen, that bin literally says County Waste Disposal in bold letters." She muttered something about tampered labels before storming off into the dark. I knew right then she was spiraling, reckless, sloppy, and just a hair away from crossing a legal line she couldn't backpedal from. The next morning, my mailbox was stuffed with flyers claiming I was under investigation for fraud and a danger to the community. The flyers were printed on cheap paper, but the font and formatting were suspiciously similar to Maple Grove's official newsletters. Neighbors said they'd found them on every door within a 2-block radius. Mike didn't even have to see them in person before he called it. That's harassment, plain and simple. In distributing false statements, defamation. I filed a police report that afternoon, attaching photos of the flyers and pointing out the HOA logo she'd illegally used at the top. The officer taking my statement nodded grimly. "She's digging her own grave. If she's distributing these while under investigation, it's going to look like witness intimidation." 2 days later, I got an unexpected knock, not from the police this time, but from Patricia. She stood on my porch holding a thick binder. "This," she said, handing it to me, "is everything we have on her mismanagement. Budgets, receipts, meeting recordings. The board voted to cooperate fully with the county investigation. We're done protecting her." Inside the binder, I found damning evidence, invoices for community landscaping, that were actually payments to a lawn service registered in Karen's cousin's name, receipts for clubhouse renovations that never happened, and, most telling, copies of her own delinquent dues notices. It was everything the county prosecutor would need to move from allegations to charges. Karen's last stand came the following weekend, at the grocery store of all places. I was loading bags into my truck when she marched up, phone out, recording me. "This is the man stealing from our community," she announced to startled shoppers. "He's under investigation for thousands in unpaid bills." Before I could answer, a voice behind me spoke, calm, official, and devastating. It was Detective Harris from the county sheriff's office, who just happened to be in line. Actually, he said, stepping forward, he's the victim in our case. And you, Ms. Davenport, should consider your next words carefully, because you're already facing charges for filing a false report. The look on her face was priceless: rage, fear, and the dawning realization that her little empire was collapsing. She turned without a word and fled the store, leaving her cart behind. I didn't know it at the time, but that public outburst, caught on multiple shoppers' phones, would end up as Exhibit A in the case against her.